leading to steadiness of feeling. Now, not all of these virtues will speak deeply, but courtesy is something that many of us have had to struggle with, even though often it's been very unconscious, because we are given this kind of social code of politeness, and this politeness is a way of us engaging with people. Now, some take this to an extreme where the stranger, in a way, gets the best of us, that we treat strangers with a kind of courtesy more than we do those that are close, those that we engage with in daily life. And then there are others that really actually do not give courtesy, do not receive or hold space for others at all. And this sort of dynamic is very prevalent today between what is kind of my world that I let someone else in or share with another, and actually what is the world I want to keep others out. Now, courtesy is really quite a deep way of understanding how we host each other, how we receive each other. And is it possible for us to host and receive each individual that we meet in the same way? Now, this virtue leads me to speaking about what we're preparing for in the upcoming Michaelmas talks. They will begin at the beginning of September for 3 weeks, once a week for 3 weeks. And there's a link below for those of you that might want to join in, because there's something in this question of how is it that we afford certain people more of our attention than we do others. Now, often we are likely to give our attention, we are likely to host and receive another if, for instance, there is a kind of desire for something that the other has, or a desire for the way we want the other to see us. And that's why some people find themselves being polite to the stranger, because they want to be seen in a certain way. They desire something from the other. And desire actually means we host people differently, because we desire different things from different people. And then, of course, we have this other activity of what is familiar to us. There are certain individuals that actually are recognized in a familiar way. They have familiar patterns, familiar conditioning, perhaps familiar ways of being in the world, or a familiar humor. And again, that we tend to afford a kind of activity of engagement with those that are familiar to us. And we may find it difficult to offer the same attention to those that carry unfamiliar ways of walking, being, relating in the world. And the third factor in what will bring us into giving our attention to another is karma. The karma will draw us to a dynamic of engaging, whether it be in sympathy or in antipathy, whether it's because we want to give our attention out of a liking, or we actually give attention out of a disliking. There's another reason why we might be affording someone more attention and not able to equally host, equally receive all those that walk in our path and in our life. And this is interesting, that this courtesy, this ability to hold the manners of the court to all that are present, to hold the manners of the court to all that are present, is something that really does lead to a kind of deep steadiness in the feeling life. And you can see that in those that have this virtue. Now, we don't have an abundance of all the virtues, and some have more connection to one virtue than another. But it's very useful to kind of get a sense of what is it that creates a willingness to host another equally to someone else. And how is it in our world at this time of great division where we are really drawing lines or creating those for, those against, this dividing of each other? How is it that we can work now towards creating this sense of hosting, receiving, this courtesy that will lead to a steadiness, this steadiness of feeling that is so important in these times where people's feelings seem to be more all over the place, more up and down, more out of their domain of harmony. Now, this leads me to speak about Michaelmas because in this Michaelmas preparation, we're looking towards this esoteric ability to create out of nothing, as it's called. Now, this creating out of nothing is what brings the new into being. Most of the times we're living out of patterns. In fact, you could say your desire, your familiar, and your karma is the past coming to be met again, and not the new coming into being. How do we break fresh ground? How do we work with the new? And this is really a Michaelmas picture because Michaelmas is working towards the future. What is the new, the future that we are trying to create out of these changing times? We don't want to just recreate, to reimagine what has been and try and find a new way with what has been, but rather, or a reimagined way of the old over and over again, but rather how to really bring something out of nothing, meaning it's not from desire, it's not from the familiar, it's not from karma, it is from this awakened direct connection to the spiritual world. And that's what Michaelmas is really helping us to do. Esoterically, it's named creating out of nothing, but it's really creating with, being co-creative with the spiritual world. But that's not what happens with the adverse forces. The adverse forces do not create the new, but they can adulterate and adjust and, in a way, twist what wants to come into being, twist what has been created. So we will work more deeply with that over the 3 Michaelmas sessions, but to work now with this courtesy for this month can be a doorway into this understanding of what it is to receive the other with courtesy. That means with this courtly manner, no matter who it is that I meet. I recently had the privilege to meet someone that had this in abundance, and it was really quite a powerful experience, not just to see what that was able to offer the other, but also this deep steadiness of feeling that resounded out of that person because they carried this capacity of love into the world so deeply. So, as we work towards this contemplation of what is it for each of us to host the other, to have this genuine courtesy, not a conditioned politeness or a way of creating a boundary of protection around my little world, but an ability to truly receive and host each individual with this courtly-like manner. What is that for each one of us? So again, we will try to work into this preparation. We're starting with a restfulness of soul exercise. Now, some of these exercises are deep and they may require a certain amount of inner development before they awaken deeply within us. And this exercise, to a certain degree, requires that we have an ability to concentrate. But at the same time, it's useful to try these things. And if it's not the exercise that's working for you for this month's virtue, you can choose one of the many other exercises. So this first exercise, we try to get a sense of how we can, in a certain way, host ourselves. And the way that this is described is that if you were to close your eyes and in a way experience your boundary, just really get a sense of the boundaries of your body, the boundaries of your form, the boundaries of your features, a sense of these boundaries of yourself. And then, if possible, imagine yourself now looking back at yourself, that you are now standing in front of you, observing yourself. Can you see yourself there, sitting in the chair, or where you are? And in these moments, we enter towards the formula, I am, and bringing your attention to the third eye, the pineal gland. I am. And then the consciousness moves towards the back of the head and slowly but clearly down the spine until it rests just behind the heart center. Courtesy. And for those of you that are working with the verse, Virgo. Behold the worlds, O soul. Let the soul take hold of worlds. Let the spirit lay hold of being. Work out of powers of life. Upon will experience build. In blossoming worlds put trust. O soul, comprehend the beings. And then we extinguish all that we've been thinking and contemplating, but stay inwardly active. courtesy.